All right, happy Monday, everybody. Go brew out. All right, so I'd get into the spirit week. This is a vigilante week. No vigilante parade this week. That sucks. 95 years of history there. We're not going to have it. Only other time that we didn't have the parade, I believe, was World War II, maybe World War One. But anyway, so it's Monday, April 27th. So here we go. We're into the Great Depression. Last week we had certainly some things due. The Roaring Twenties project was due. Most of those. I think everything that's been turned in is graded, so that's awesome. You guys are doing a great work there. But we're into the Great Depression. We had causes as an entry question, I believe, last week. Lots of different causes. Overproduction, from farmers to Ford Auto Company. Everybody was producing too much stuff. That actually deals with a question in today's entries. We had easy credit or unstable credit structure, and it was way too easy to get a loan and to borrow money to buy things, whether the farmers were borrowing more money or people were borrowing money to buy a Ford car. So everybody was borrowing way too much money, and it wasn't a good structure that was set up there. We had international debt, a lot of international debt, which that was stemming from World War One. We had loaned the European nations a lot of money, and then once the war ended, because of the Treaty of Versailles, even that again we didn't sign. We never signed the Treaty of Versailles, but England and France wanted to punish Germany, so they made Germany have to pay war reparations. The email there I had to get rid of on my screen. So they made Germany pay war reparations, $33 billion back to France and Great Britain, which Germany couldn't pay. And so we loaned even more money to Germany. I mean, during the early to mid 1920s, and just the economy was booming. So why not? We've got money to give, so let's give it. By the time we get to the late 1920s, the international debt is starting to catch up with us. Accompany that with the overproduction, and then countries wanting to put in place tariffs, so that they were taxing other countries they were taxing French manufacturers and English manufacturers and German manufacturers that wanted to sell their products in the United States. We began to tax them. Then they began to tax us. So the international debt / international trade structures were also a cause to the Great Depression. We had an uneven distribution of wealth that was pretty out of control in the 1920s, and that's certainly going to contribute the discrepancy between the top end of the wealthy and the bottom end of the poor. You're always going to have wealthy, you're always going to have poor, but it seemed to be that a very large percentage of the United States lived at or below the poverty line, and that caused problems. I think I said the drought, the plight of the farmers, and then lastly, that also leads into some of last week's and this week's stuff is the panic and the runs on the banks. Banks started to go bankrupt, to go out of business because they were loaning out way too much money. People weren't able to pay those loans back, and they were loaning money so people could invest in the stock market. It was way too easy to make money in the stock market, so they thought. So that gets us into the Great Depression. Last week's questions was one of last week's questions was about how many banks had gone bankrupt or gone out of business by 1933. By the time FDR takes office, 9,000 banks had closed their doors, and so that's a lot of banks, and so you don't have any confidence in the banks. If I begin to hear rumors right now that Wells Fargo is not my bank, is not, like, a friend of mine goes to the bank and with his ATM card tries to withdraw money, and that ATM is out of money, which happens. But there's a message on the screen that says Wells Fargo is not going to be giving out any money today. little red flags starting to be raised here. Like, why? I go to the bank and they say, well, yeah, we're not going to give out anybody's money. I was like, that's my money. I have $1,000 in my bank account. I need to withdraw some money. Rumors like that began to spread by 1931 and 32. When rumors like that spread, when banks don't have money to give to their patrons, when that's not their money, it's my money, they're just holding it for me, there's going to be a lot of confidence lost in the banking system. And by 1933, there wasn't a lot of confidence. A lot of your great grandparents or your grandparents may have felt a lot more comfortable hiding their, storing their money, or putting their money under their mattress. And FDR addressed that right when he took office. One of the first things he does in 1933, per This Week, is call for a national or a nationwide temporary bank holiday, is what he called it. Is let's close every bank in the United States and let's assess what is happening. Let's stop the bleeding. And then they figured out which banks should be reopened and which shouldn't. And the federal government then began, as they are now, doling out hundreds of millions of dollars to these banks to prevent kind of to restore confidence back in the banking system. 30,000 businesses went out of business in 1932 alone. I mean, we're in this right now where employees aren't being paid or not in a position to be paid. Those businesses, how are they to stay open? If I own a restaurant right now, one of the things that's keeping me in business is the federal government and the money that I'm able to apply for. But that wasn't there from 1929, from stock market crash until really 1933. That wasn't there. None of those big government relief agencies were available. And what were there were kind of too little, too late. Hoover tried the Reconstruction Finance Corporation, but it was just too little, too late. And then by 1933, the peak of the Depression, we have about 12, 13 million, and I've even seen some numbers that go up to 15 million people unemployed. Okay, so, and if you did have a job still, so we can't look just at that unemployment rate. That 12 million, we'll just take the low number, that 12 million people were unemployed. There may be another 20% of the population that still had a job, but they had taken considerable wage cuts or the hours a week they were working was being cut. So it was a considerable damage onto the American population, whether you were unemployed or still employed, just not making nearly as much as you were used to. Question number 5 last week, the Hollywood Fantasy Factory, and trying to make some similarities to today. I got some great answers, and I got some answers exactly what I was hoping to get. That people, the textbook talked about how millions of people went to the movies during the early and mid 1930s during the Great Depression. And why were they going to the movies? The movies were really cheap. It was a cheap form of entertainment, but God, it was an escape. It was, let's go to the movie and watch something for an hour and a half that will take my mind off of what I'm dealing with. That's happening a lot today. Netflix, Hulu, Amazon, all these streaming companies, you can watch movies, whatever it might be, is another opportunity for us to maybe just get our mind off of things. And I mean, I was guilty of it for the last few weeks, just addicted to the Game of Thrones. And so, yeah, that's where I saw some similarities when I was reading through that part of the textbook and asked for that, and I got some great answers. Last question from last week was the bonus army. In fact, it was identify who the bonus marchers were and describe how their plan had ended. Okay, well, they were veterans from World War I, and so no social media back then. Social media back then virtually was, snail mail. Write a letter, put it in the mail, and mail it to people, or telephone somebody. And the word got out that that there was this, let's march to Washington, D.C. Let's go to D.C. and see if we can get a bonus. Congress had passed earlier saying, hey, all you veterans, great job in fighting the war. We will give you a bonus in, I want to say it was 1944, 1945, when all of these World War I veterans would be of the age of in their 50s and 60s. We'll give you a kind of a retirement check to pay tribute to your service fighting in World War I or in the Great War. By 1932, these veterans were saying, well, I don't want to wait till 1944 or 45. I want it now. Even if I only get $1,000, I'll take it now. Just, I need some money. I don't have a house. My bank foreclosed on my house. I don't have a job. I need money. And so this overall movement said, let's go to Washington, D.C. and argue our case. They argued their case. And one of the biggest regrets Hoover had as president was that he agreed to not give those veterans their bonus. It was a different government. It was a different time. This idea of rugged individualism, we're going to pull ourselves up by our own bootstraps, dust ourselves off, we'll get back to work. The country just wasn't in the position ever before to say the government's job is to really help people and bail people out when times are tough. Prior to 1929, it was, hey, we're sorry that this is happening. We feel bad for you, but you're on your own. And so Hoover kind of felt like if we give all these thousands of veterans their bonus, how many other people are going to come calling? So he turned them down. Some said, great, we didn't get our money, so be it. A lot of others said, screw that. I don't have anywhere. I can't go back to Portland, Oregon. I can't go back to Denver, Colorado. I'm not going to go back to Brooklyn, New York. I was counting on that bonus. I want my bonus. And so a riot ensued, had a clash. As in our textbook, I posted another picture online of this. The clash with police. That ended in a victory for the bonus marchers, I guess. But then Hoover also called out the U.S. Army, and they rolled through the streets of Washington, D.C. in tanks and used tear gas, and it was just a bad deal. And a couple people were killed, I think, including children were killed in the tear gas attack onto the bonus marchers there in Washington, D.C. So that's where we are today. I see that I'm still under 15 minutes. I wasn't able to keep it to the 10 minutes, but today we're getting into FDR's New Deal, his New Deal program, and introducing all these different programs to get the country out of the Great Depression. And whether it works or not, well, we got to just stay tuned. So go brew out, and I don't know what tomorrow was. I can't remember. Stay at home, it'll be the same picture, but I'm not going to post anything. I'll send a picture to Mr. Zanto, but nonetheless. Anyway, stay safe, and we'll chat soon. Okay, see you guys.